Welcome, everybody, to the world of marketing. I'm Tom Foster, your host, here with the magnificent Dave Fries.
That's how I prefer to be referred to.
Today's a special day.
It is?
It is a special day because I've got you here at the
I'm in the
podcast studio.
I am excited to be in the studio. It's fantastic, by the way.
And we're doing some new things. One, we got you here. It's not your first time on the podcast, but we got you here. We actually just did a podcast a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, thanks for having me back so soon.
But, I think that you've been on the podcast more than anybody else. And I appreciate you doing it because you're a great guy and my good friend.
I love doing it. And if I have
now.
something I can share, I'm a big sharer.
And the next thing that is new is that I'm reading a introduction about you.
Which I did
which
not
I've
write.
never done before.
It's a little scary.
Thank you, Thomas, for preparing this. Great job, Thomas.
I'll withhold my thanks, Thomas, until I hear it.
Right. So here we go. At UNRWA, Turner, Burke, and Fries, attorneys at law, Dave Fries heads the firm's Trust, Estate, and Wealth Preservation section and co-chairs the Elder Law Solutions section of the firm. Dave serves on the boards of multiple trust companies and trust committees. He has appeared on NPR and is a frequent speaker in the areas of trust, estate planning, administration, communication, and presentation skills, and lots of marketing stuff. Additionally, he is the founder and leader of Business Black Ops, an organization created to teach business owners how to use force multipliers to solve problems and achieve their goals.
That's fair. I like it, Thomas.
Welcome, Dave Fries.
Thank you.
To the
Glad
show.
to be here.
Good job. Thank you.
That could have gone way worse.
No, that was very good.
And that was a good read.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I did it I didn't screw it up. And today's topic is how to get into the mind of your perfect client, which there's no better person to talk to about this than really the guy that I kind of attribute the perfect client exercise to, which is you, Dave Fries. How to get in the mind of your perfect client, because you want to know, who you're selling to. You want to sell more to that person. So what is the first step one must take in understanding their perfect client?
These are good questions. I think that answer to that one is going to depend where you are on the business building, practice building journey. So if you're just starting out, you're just starting your firm, you're coming out of military service and you are coming out of a big firm and you're starting your firm, you're going to come at this in a slightly different way because you're guessing to a certain extent who your perfect client is going to be.
And you tend to want all of them.
Yeah. There's
like all of them. Give me everything.
I can help everybody.
Right.
Which is a recipe for failure.
Right.
Which is counterintuitive. Yep. And we all do it, and we do it at various times in the trajectory.
We do it over again, even though we suffered.
But if you were just starting out, I think that the easiest path to this is to start with yourself. And so, I've always encouraged people to do another exercise, which is really clarify your purpose in life and then the purpose of the business that, in this case, we're talking about you're forming or you're early to it or you're changing it. So what's my purpose? Why am I here? What makes me feel good?
That's a great point, is find out what makes you happy. Like think about really, because that kind of will inform you about the kind of people that you want to work with.
Yes, it's gonna color. I would say for better, not for worse.
That's great advice.
How you think about
Start
that.
with yourself. Start with what makes you happy. How do you want to work? And that will, and what does your life look like?
Yeah. So I always call it purpose, value, mission. Purpose and value, I think, are the two things you're talking about, which is, what do you want to do? Who do you want to do it for? What do you do well already? What are the aspects of the work that you're going to enjoy? And so I'm not one of those people that says you should only do what you love, because that's not really how the world works. But you
can aspire to do that.
You can aspire to it, and you can try to structure things where more of what you're doing is stuff that really motivates you.
At least focusing on it.
Mm-hmm. And the same thing, Tom, with the values. What are my personal values and those values I'm bringing to my business, the things that I'm just always going to have guiding me, the things that I will do and that I will not do? Because that's going to, if you're just starting out, not just guide who you want to work with, what you want to do for them, but also as you start to build a team, it's going to dictate who is on that team to help you to deliver those services.
So let's assume that we have developed some kind of way, some perfect client. We've developed our understanding of this. What are the top 3 tactics that you would give us in finding this perfect client?
Sure. So again, if you're just starting out, it's going to be different. But let's jump in this case to, I have a little experience either from where I was before, or I've been working in this firm, and now I want to do more of the work that I like to do and I'm good at for more of the kind of people that I want. So I always, in my early days, I would talk about the perfect client, do the perfect client exercise. Now I do 2 things. Who's my current perfect client?
Right.
And who's my aspirational perfect client?
Sure.
Because these both should always be changing. And we can explain why if you want to. But if we want to get at the perfect client, one relatively easy way to do it is for you and or your team members to identify who are the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 10, the 100 best clients that we have. And typically what you'll start to see then is that there's certain common traits to them. They come to you wanting what you have already. They love and respect you and your methodology. They've been referred lots of times by somebody else so that they bring the trust of that person to them. They're easier to start working with. Whatever it might be, we can't know. But if we look at any practice at the people that they love working with, on profitable work. Let's add that, because sometimes we love working with stuff that's not profitable work. So if we look at the clients we love working with, we do a great job for them, we get the fewest complaints from them, we get the best reviews from them, they make referrals afterwards. If we look at them, we're going to see, hey, there are things that are common about them. Maybe it's that they were referred to somebody else. Maybe that they're a certain type of client with a certain type of business. Maybe they're mostly men, maybe they're mostly women, maybe they're a certain age. Those factors help us to identify who that client is that we're already working with that's really, really good. We do a great job for them. They love us. They perceive us as producing really incredible value, well in excess of what they pay us. And I've already said that tactically, I would always be looking for who is it that we enjoy working with, of them, of that group.
And how do we get to them?
Then how do we get to more of them?
Yeah, how do we get to more of them?
Yeah, so once we've identified who they are and that we enjoy working with them.
And I love what you said about being profitable.
Yeah, being profitable.
Making sure that they're profitable.
Yeah, no, we're not putting money necessarily first here. There are all sorts of things that go into
but it's an important part of the equation.
Sure, you got to make your practice work.
Right.
I mean, there's almost 50 people that work at my practice, so that's a lot of people that rely on.
You got to feed them.
Yeah, and if I don't pay attention to that, I'm not really serving the client, and I'm not really serving. Because here's the thing. People will pay you more money if in their mind, in their perception, they're getting more value.
Well, and you have to deliver, and a lot of times they need the service that costs more money.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times people come to me. I run a trusted estates practice, as you mentioned. So people will come in and they'll say that they're very affluent people, and they come in and they go, I just want a simple will. Well, okay. Tell me why. What do you want it to do? And they tell me. And I say, well, are you also interested in this? Are you interested in this? Do you care about this? Does this matter? What worries you about this? And we get to the end, and I'm giving them solutions as we go. And I always tell them at the start, I'm going to give you a range of solutions, and they'll be at different prices. Right. You'll pick what is valuable to you and what you think you should pay for. That's up to you. We get to the end, and somebody that came in that expected to spend $2,000 is happily spending $5,000 or $10,000, but they're not doing what they thought they were doing when they came in. Here's an interesting tell, and I would encourage everybody that's listening or watching this to do this. We ask people when they come in why they came in, but then we ask them when they're done, oh, what was most helpful to you? And people will say, oh, I came in to avoid probate or to save taxes, these sort of superficial, not unimportant things, but they're mechanical. But we all know that's not what's driving human behavior. And then when they leave, they go, and we ask them what was most helpful. They'll say, I never knew I could protect my kids and grandchildren so that if they get an inheritance, they don't lose it in a divorce.
Right. They learn more things once they come in and talk to you about stuff that they didn't know that they needed.
Exactly. And they're happy to pay for that. Or they don't want that. They don't pay for that. That's okay. But we get to them and get them to come and see us or get interest in a variety of ways. And I think that's what you're asking, right? Like tactically, what are some ways to take this knowledge?
How do we get more of these perfect clients that we want?
The main way in my mind, and I know a lot about how humans make decisions and what they think about as important to them. So one of the best ways I have of doing this and the fastest ways to the result is I pay very close attention to the language that those perfect clients use when they come in,
right?
Because they're early in the journey of figuring this all out. So they're using the language of somebody that's not as informed. They use different language when we're done. So I'm paying
attention. Because you've taught them the language.
Correct. I taught them to think about things in a new way.
Right.
So
but they don't know that coming in.
Correct. And lawyers often miss this nuance, and they're talking.
This is really important, everybody.
It is, because they're talking to people based on things that they, the lawyer, know in their head, and some of their best clients have learned. But they don't recognize that's going to be meaningless to the prospect. What's going to matter to the prospect is, what are those people talking about who are your really good prospects that convert into clients when they're still early in the process? So for example, for elder law attorneys, I see this all the time in their blogs. They have all these blogs talking about Medicaid trusts. Well, nobody really knows what a Medicaid trust is, but everybody is worried that their mom and dad or their grandparents worked for their whole lives and have this house and it's going to go just for nursing home care. And if that matters to that family and that mom and dad don't want that to happen and there's a legitimate legal way to preserve it, great, but we should talk about that. How do you protect grandmom and grandpop's house from being spent on nursing home or long-term care when they work their whole lives for it? You don't talk about a Medicaid qualifying trust. In the more sophisticated kind of estate planning that we do, we talk about things like, did you know that you could protect your son, your daughter, your grandchildren's inheritance from being lost in a divorce or lawsuit in a society where that's happening more and more and more? So they understand that. They may not have been thinking they had that, but we've just alerted them to something that's more truly important to them. The key, though, is to listen to what their problems are as they articulate them. What are they afraid of? You have to ask these questions. Another thing I like to ask really good clients is, where do you go for trusted information? Where did you find out about these estate planning issues? Because if there are particular magazines like the Rob Report or something like that, or a particular website, you could go and advertise there. You could appear as a guest on that platform's podcast. If you're going to a place that your great prospects who are going to become great clients already trust, you're overcoming a massive barrier. Like if you just go on a podcast that your clients aren't listening to, your clients aren't going to hear you. I always say, if I want to catch an alligator, I don't put a chicken in the parking lot at the King of Prussia Mall in Pennsylvania. I won't catch an alligator because they're not there. But if I put a chicken in a retention basin down in, Tampa, Florida, I might catch an alligator. Right. So you got to go to the right place. And if it's a place that they tell you they trust, you've already overcome a big barrier, which is people are justifiably super skeptical about information they hear on the news and from various sources anymore. So pay attention to what your clients are saying, the language they're using. Pay attention to their pain points and how they describe their fears and their worries. Pay attention to where they're going for trusted information, because then you can start
and you can put some of this information out there yourself, which you've done.
Yep.
This is exactly
kind of
how you've
magnetic
gotten,
piece.
right? Some of your best clients, some of your perfect clients,
yes,
you've done by posting content, video content,
Lots of video content for lawyers, yeah.
So would you say that some of your best and most perfect clients have come through your video content?
Weirdly, yes. You would think that the CEOs of a brand name corporation would not be going to the internet for their trust and estate planning, but they do. And I will also say this, most of our clients are referred by other clients, but they always go to the website, and it's there where they say, oh, Charlie who referred me or Janice who referred me sent me to the right place. This guy, when I go to his website, I see lots of content answering the very specific worries and questions that are in my mind.
Which is what you just said.
Yes.
Is answering people's questions that they have. And that is the purpose of your website, obviously, is to have the content there that answers people's questions.
And I'm a giant fan of very specific content. Remember you were saying we want to solve it for everybody? But when I find that...
solve it for your perfect clients.
Yeah, we don't want to put generic stuff out there for everybody.
For simple wills, no.
Yep.
But for your specific estate plans,
and then I
the kind of
subdivide
clients you want.
Like, so lawyers, a lot of lawyers come to me to get their estate planning done. And they're relatively good clients because they've decided, like, hey, I don't know all the technical internal revenue code stuff. David, that's why I'm here. So believe it or not, lawyers tend not to plow through the language and torture themselves wondering what section 672 of the Internal Revenue Code means. Where there are other clients, like a doctor, not all doctors are like this, but lots of doctors will go through and want to know the explanation of every code section. Well, I mean, when I had a bad spinal cord injury, I didn't say to my neurosurgeon, I'd like to assist you in doing the surgery, and I need to know every tool you're going to use.
Right.
I went to an Ivy League educated neurosurgeon working at a prominent hospital because I trusted that he or she would make the right technical decisions. What I think clients really need to demand from the lawyers is, can you explain this to me in plain language so I can make sure that you are listening carefully to me and this matches up with and does everything that I want it to do. So I maybe will do multiple articles on how lawyers do estate planning, like what kind of lawyers do they go to and what are they worried about. I might not do the same thing for doctors because one of those professions I find easy to work with and they trust what I'm doing. And the other, I mean, I represent lots of doctors, by the way, but maybe I'm not going after them.
Maybe you just don't want more of them. Maybe you just
don't spend your time and your money and your energy and your resources going after clients that are...
The point is that you can shape your content.
Yes.
You can shape your marketing for your perfect client.
And you could shape the other podcasts that you go on. You could choose which audiences you're going to speak to.
Right.
Yeah.
Going back to our tactic. That's fantastic. All right. Can you explain what a force multiplier is in terms of business growth to our audience?
Yeah, sure. So this is one of my favorite topics, as you know, because you've been...
This is great. Force multiplier.
You've been involved in business black ops since the start. So I have been privileged through, I'm a civilian, I've always been a civilian, but I was lucky and able to work with lots of, actually I worked with the Marines a lot, so I see you've got your, and so I was privileged to work with a lot of folks in the military, Naval Special Forces, I worked with a lot of people in clandestine service over the years. And so one of the things that I sort of learned from that world was this idea of a force multiplier, that there are ways that you can make the energy you have, the money you have, the resources you have, go further and do more. So a good example, I think we may have used this on a podcast episode 100 years ago, but it's worth repeating. A good example in the military would be night vision. So night vision, according to the Pentagon, I think is a 5 times force multiplier, meaning that somebody equipped with night vision that can engage the enemy at night is 5 times more powerful than they would be without it. And force multipliers are synergistic too. Like if you give a highly trained operator who's been carefully selected and trained night vision, that might be a 20 times force multiplier.
Right.
In our businesses, there are things that we can identify that help us to do business and all aspects of business more easily. This is helpful to lawyers. I know a lot of them are listening, and to other professional practice owners, because there's so much chaos and there's so much demand on their time, and they're both trying to run businesses and do the professional services. So anything you could do that makes you more powerful and efficient and effective is useful. So in my framework, I've broken it down into meta force multipliers, super high level mindset kind of stuff that helps us to be more resilient. And you can teach these and you can learn these and you can practice doing them. And then strategic force multipliers. And these are things that help to guide our tactics. So if we know our purpose, our value, our mission, we could be asking ourselves, this is a strategy, is this tactic I'm going to use in alignment with those? Will it advance it? Is it the 80% that gets very little of the result, or is it in the 20% of things I could do that are going to get me the massive bulk of the result? So these are strategic force multipliers. And then we get to tactical force multipliers. So these are things like you were just mentioning. Can we do a video on a really specific topic that would be highly appealing? And can we then drive traffic to that from a podcast appearance? Or how should we do those things? There's unlimited things we could do to develop our practices. Only a few of them will make sense given the perfect client we're going after, and they won't all look the same. So I like to work at the mindset level first, because if you're more resilient and you learn how to be more resilient and you learn how to do things in a way that gives you more flexibility, you're way more likely to be able to execute on strategy and tactics more effectively.
So what is a good example of a business force multiplier?
Yeah, so at the mindset level, inversion thinking. So, well, at the mindset level, the big mindset level, flexibility. So lawyers tend not to be the most flexible people. They sort of self-select.
What?
But there's an old adage that the most flexible part of the system controls the system. So learning to be more flexible, developing a heightened level of acuity, like learning that it's not just what people say, but how they say it, the expression on their face. So I was trained many, many years ago as an interrogator. And learning to watch these other things makes you way more powerful because you have more knowledge. This isn't mind reading. This is just learning how human beings work at a added on layer. So at the mindset level, there's things like that. At the inversion thinking, let me just take a moment on that. At the strategic level, inversion thinking. This I learned from reading Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner. And Munger always said, people say, I want to be rich. And they always focus on, what do I do to be rich? And there's lots of ways to become rich. But Munger would say, whenever you're starting off on a journey like that, you have a goal, invert it. What do people do that keep them from being rich? And when you invert it and you think about it, you come up with these 4 or 5 things that universally people do that screw up their wealth and keep them from being rich. Here's why that's important. Lots of ways to get to be rich, but if you make these 4 or 5 mistakes, especially later in life rather than earlier, harder to recover from it. It takes enormous energy. So that's a really powerful strategy for people. Anytime you're making a decision about something you're going to go, invert it and think about, well, what's the opposite of it? So you identify the danger. And then tactically, I mean, these are unlimited, of course, but we mentioned content. So there's things beyond our control that we have to get people to help with. Usually they're beyond our knowledge base, like SEO, optimizing content for SEO to get organic traffic. But there are lots of things that are within our control. If we can produce a piece of high quality content that's super appealing to our perfect client,
you can turn that piece of content over to an SEO person to optimize.
Let them optimize it, right? But the discipline of either creating or have somebody on your team or hiring somebody that knows how to create content around what it is that you do, appealing to your perfect client, that's awesome. Can I throw one more out that's really good? I mentioned it earlier. Having a perfect client is great, but the world's constantly changing, and what they expect and want from you is changing too. So don't think that the job is done when you've identified who your, quote, perfect client is. And the second thing is you should be having your aspirational perfect client. A good way to do this is to look at any given year, what did my top 10, 20% that probably produced most of the revenue that I really liked working with, what do they look like? And then what's the top 4 or 5% of that look like? That's that new aspirational perfect client. And sometimes you just intuit who they are. Somebody comes in and you go, that person's different than who I've worked with before, but that was a fantastic experience. I'm going to look for more of that kind of client.
Yeah.
So having a strategy of constantly reevaluating and
Right.
monitoring
And improving your view of your perfect client, improving that avatar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit. So what is the key to understanding and enacting the art of persuasion?
So I felt a little anxiety when you said we're switching gears, because then I never know where we're going.
Right. So that's where we went.
Persuasion.
So this is your other talent, your other skill.
Yes. So one of the things that wasn't in that list of things I teach, I really do spend most of my time speaking to conferences about leadership and marketing. Those are sort of the two. But what the two of those things have in common, although I was just developing an interrogation course for a major metropolitan police department, which was fun. But all of those things that we were just talking about have in common that persuasion and influence matter very much. So I realize that people listening are probably not that interested in conducting interrogation. Right. Although just maybe if you have teenagers. Well, if you have teenagers.
If you're interested.
Yeah, it's
interrogation. Those techniques.
But being more persuasive and being more influential are super powerful drivers of really good marketing. And if you're running a business, they mean that your team has more rapport with you and trust in you. They're less likely to move. They're more likely to tell you if they're dissatisfied. You have a deeper understanding of what they need, so you provide better, more directed training. There are all these advantages to being more persuasive and influential. So how and why? So let's start with the difference. I'm not sure if you looked in the dictionary if this would be the difference, but to me, persuasion's hard work. It's getting people to look at a problem from a different perspective and to think about it in a different way. Can be done, just hard. Influence, easy, but because influence is when people already know, like, trust you, and say, Tom and Foster Wed Marketing consistently solve my marketing problems over and over and over and over and over again. So when I have something that even looks like a marketing problem, or maybe even isn't a marketing problem, I'm going to go to them because they have my best interest in mind. I know them, I like them, I trust them. That's influence, where people are just coming to you, seeking your advice and your input and your ability to give them a different perspective. You need to be persuasive to get to influence most of the time. So persuasion, we could spend the next 2 years talking about this
totally.
Topic. But if I had to boil
just
it
give
down,
me the high level.
High level is learn to develop trust more quickly, deeply, and effectively. In fact, I was working with a former CIA field officer, and he said to me, I know you, I like you, but I don't trust you. And the reason he said that is they teach at CIA. If you get to know somebody really quickly and you instantly like them, you should stop.
Right.
Because they could be manipulating you. And no-like leads for most people to trust. It takes an enormous amount of control and training to stop the slippery slope of no-like trust. So if you find ways to build rapport with people more quickly, you genuinely show them that you understand them, you ask questions, you clarify their meaning, you are always doing it in a way, so when somebody comes to see me. So that's the strategy, build no-like trust, because when you have trust, it speeds the process. And there are a number of good books written about this idea. But trust speeds the process because people don't have to go into every analysis. Like those people that are asking me, what does Section 672 mean? I haven't built, that's on me. I haven't built a deep enough level of trust with them. Because otherwise they would say, I told him what I want. He tells me the section does this. I would be okay with that. So building trust is shockingly easier than people think. But there is a process to it, and it takes some work, and you know how to do it. And it means you're no longer you-centric. That when you're appealing to prospects, you want to show them that you're worthy of their trust when they come to you. And you've already laid the platform for that. And then when they get there and they're in front of you, if you're in a private practice, you want to do things like this. Like when people come to me, I say, in a minute, I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions, and they're all about you. And then, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. But before we do that, before we even get started, and I just used the technique there for those people watching, what is it that you want to make sure happens today, that we absolutely positively achieve for you? So right up front, within the first minute, I've told them that what they want is the most important thing that's going to go on. Another thing is it's easy to sort of drift off when you're talking to a client.
Well, you just did that with me yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did, in that room down there.
Yes, you did.
I asked that very question. So you are confirming for everybody that I practice what I preach. I talk to so many people that yammer on about all of these theories, and then when you work with them, you're like, what?
Well, yeah, full disclosure. I mean, I work with Dave Fries on a consultant basis. He helps me with...
It's one of my favorite things to do.
Right. And so we had a session all day long yesterday, and he did exactly this.
Yeah, because so it builds that, even though we've known one another for a long
20
time.
years, yeah.
I've proven, well, that same CIA officer we were talking about said to me, like months later, okay, I trust you.
Yeah.
And he said, it's because every time you said something, you came through. We talked about helping Ukraine, you came through. We talked about, are there other people that want to help Ukraine? You came through. He said he couldn't understand. This is funny. You'll like this. He's like, I couldn't understand why you were running this group, Business Black Ops, when you have this very successful law practice over here. Why would you do that? And he said, then he sat in on a program that you and I were there.
Oh, okay.
And he said that was like I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and it was transformational. He goes, now I get why you were doing it. At first, I thought there's something up here. Because, well, they're trained to be super suspicious.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I got two more.
I'm so scared.
One, and this last question.
I feel like I got through this so far.
First question is easy. You've got those yellow things there. You haven't done anything with them.
Well, what I was going to do was I was going to write Tom on here and put an arrow pointing to you, and then Dave here and put an arrow pointing to me.
Oh, you did. Okay, now you've done it.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
That would help me to be. But I felt like I was going to remember who you were, so I didn't.
That's good. Okay.
It's just a SPAC.
We got that out of the way. So this is a good question Thomas came up with. All right, you ready?
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Can you summarize how you can use the biology of human decision-making, emotional triggers, and language to become more persuasive, effective, and influential in your life and marketing?
Thomas, that's a big. And what do we have, like 4 seconds left?
Right. You go.
Well, I mean, if you want an easy one, this is one that will bore you because I've used it as an example for 150 years. But if it's in a book I wrote about how spies, interrogators, and special forces operators would, raise their kids because they understand if they're good at what they're doing, how humans react and how to control themselves. There's a lot to this, but if we say to somebody, like if we say to a kid, don't spill the milk, they cannot process that without creating an image of themselves spilling the milk. Anybody that's watching or listening, it at least flashed up in your mind of you spilling milk.
Right. Don't think of the color blue.
Yes, exactly. If you say don't think of the color blue, somebody's going to think of blue.
You're going to think of blue.
Don't think of the purple elephant. So, but weirdly, as humans, we tend to want to tell people the things not to do, and we rehearse them in that. So one way is to cultivate in yourself, and this will take more work than you think it will or should. This is one of the reasons that Pollyannish people are kind of right, is you actually want to tell people what you want them to do. Now, I'm not saying that you don't involve them in co-creating it, but another one would be this: recognize the supreme power of novelty and difference and change. And here's what I mean by that. We are pre-programmed genetically by bioevolutionary factors to want to stay in homeostasis. When we're in the cave, we're safe, especially if there's water in there and we have some fuel, we build a fire and the smoke goes out a little hole in the cave, all good. When it's time to go out, when Thor had to go out and get some food, A lot of times Thor did not come back. So the humans learned, hey, when you're in a safe place, stay in a safe place. So it's hard to get yourself motivated. The other thing is, if Thor survived and passed on his genes, it was because when he got to the field and looked over to where he was going to go for water, if he saw something that was different, like a big brown lump, anything different, if you're attuned to that, you're way more likely to survive, because different almost always represented either an opportunity, which was fine, or a danger. Because if it wasn't there before, what the heck went on? So the genes of people who were able to notice novelty or change were passed on to us. So you should be using that in your business.
So be more aware.
But, well, for yourself, be more aware.
Be more aware.
And for your clients, create new. You were just talking about this, right?
Yeah.
You got to create new. You got to create something different. So they go, wait, there could be danger there. And then you show them, because you've captured their attention. That gives you the
opportunity.
Ability. Yeah. Well, yes, opportunity's there. But if you want to survive, you're way less focused on opportunity than danger.
That's true.
Once you show people, once you capture their attention, once you capture their attention because there's perceived danger, you can now walk them hand in hand to opportunity. But you probably in your marketing are going to use some element of novelty as a trigger for the potential to danger. Like I said, did you know that you could protect your daughter's inheritance from being lost in a divorce? I was telling them something they didn't know. They were like, wait, I didn't know that. But I also was showing them a specific danger that they could avoid.
Right.
Then I could take them, once they've triggered that and I am able to show them my authority and my credentials and why I'm able to do this and my experience and how it works for me. Nothing works, by the way, better than when I am working with a client who started down a path that I use for my own kids, and I can say, oh, what you're doing as it's shaping up looks very much like what I do for my kids. Then people are just, the trust is there. I actually have to bring them back in and say, well, here's why yours might be different from mine, because they know I'm eating my own cookie, right? I've prepared this kind of trust for my kids. What's really persuasive is a lot of times people will be doing something where I say like, oh, I have that kind of trust from my parents to me, and I've done a similar thing as you're doing from me to my kids. And now people are in a very trusting place. But generally speaking, I can't show and tell them those sort of things until I get their attention. And I get their attention through novelty, in part because it creates danger and we're programmed to look at it.
Right.
So there you go, Thomas. I think I might have...
Thomas, those were some great questions. Great job. Well, brother, thank you so much. It's great to see you.
So good to be here in the studio, too.
It is great to have you here in the studio. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode with our friend Dave Fries in the world of marketing. We will see you soon.